Hello, everyone. I'm Kimberly Adams. Welcome back to Make Me Smart, where we make today make sense.
And I'm Rima Reis. Thanks everyone for listening or watching on the YouTube live stream. It is Friday, August 1st, and this is Economics on Tap. And I am joined right now. We have some special guests. I don't know, I guess folks on YouTube can see this. My cat has decided this is the perfect time to sit on my laptop.
Nap on your microphone.
Right?
That's Sim Sim, everyone. Everybody say hi to Sim Sim.
Hi, Sim Sim. Do you know? She's been making so many appearances today in our meetings. Oh my gosh.
And I think I hear Artax having the zoomies behind me, so I'm sure we will hear from him soon. But anyway, we are going to do some news today. We're going to play a game. We are, of course, going to talk drinks. What you got, Rima?
So I have a simple syrup that I made earlier this week that was in my fridge. Made it from some things in my garden, a lemon balm and basil. Added some sugar, put some,
Nice.
put it in my little seltzer thing, and put it in my water bottle. Yeah, it's a nice little refreshing drink. What are you drinking?
That sounds like a nice little spritzer.
Yeah.
So as you know, I was in Aspen earlier this week, and of course I have to always try the local hooch, as I say. But anyway, I went to a cocktail bar, a whiskey bar called Stranahan's, and they had their own limited edition Colorado single malt whiskey from a company called Blue Peak, and I got a bottle of it because the
It's
cocktail
a
is
big old
delicious.
bottle.
It is a big old bottle. This is my souvenir from Aspen.
I love it.
And so I have my glass and I have my giant ice cube. And so because this has been a week in the economy and politics, I'm just having my whiskey neat.
Nice.
Because sometimes it's like that. Let's see what everybody
Sometimes
else is
just gotta do
drinking in the
that.
chat.
Coca-Cola, Cheryl, mango mint limeade with some light rum. Oh, someone else is drinking like a basil simple syrup and soda. Nice.
Oh, nice. Ooh, I like that Ryan has a homemade rhubarb cordial. Oh, that's the local hooch. Okay. Let's see. Chuck drinking Redwood
Stephanie.
Empire Emerald Giant Rye and a big ice cube. Okay, another whiskey with a big ice cube. Justin with the Dark Hedges Irish whiskey. You can keep looking in the chat. I'm gonna go look in the Discord.
Okay. Stephanie says, I love that you make things out of your garden. We should hang out and make herbal stuff. I'm in Portland. That would be fun. I'm down.
Oh, people in the
Let's
Discord
see.
want to know what my shirt says. My shirt is a Chicago Public Media t-shirt. It says, I can't, I'm on deadline. Which, just a reminder to support your local public radio station, everybody, because it's hard times for us.
It's dire out here.
Liz
She says with a
here
laugh.
in DC also has so it has a French 75-ish still wine and sparkling water. Okay, that's interesting. Lots of fun drinks in the chat today.
Jefferson
Appreciate
is drinking
everybody
just
joining
water.
live. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
healthy.
we do appreciate it. I was gonna say Jefferson is just drinking water with a splash of lime, which is underrated. Anytime,
I have water
what is
also.
that? Yeah,
Water.
with a little lemon and lime goes a long way.
Yes, it's important to stay hydrated. There was so much economic news today. We got to get to
Yes.
it. You've got a cat, but okay.
Sim decided to leave right when we talked about the news. She's like, I'm good. I don't need to listen to this. I'm gonna just put you down.
Fair. So much
no,
economic
yeah, it's been a
news
big
today.
week.
Yeah, you've got the big story. Why don't you go? Well, I mean, they're both big stories, but you go first.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the big economic headlines today is that Trump fired the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner. And he is accusing her of supposedly manipulating jobs data for political reasons, even though there's no evidence, we should say, of that. He is very angry about the jobs numbers that were released today. He thinks they were rigged, that they make him, quote, look bad. And this is a big deal that Trump is attacking institutions that use objective data, right, to assess the health of the economy. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But just first, so we're on the same page, let me share some details about the jobs report in question. So the economic data is showing us that the labor market is weaker than I think a lot of us realized. So in July, the economy added 73,000 jobs, which is a lot lower than what they expected. But surprisingly, and I think the real headline here is that the job gains from May and June were significantly revised down by more than 250,000 jobs. So when we saw those numbers earlier this year, we thought like, oh, like things are looking pretty good steady growth. But these revisions show a very different picture. Like we thought we saw healthy gains of more than 140,000 jobs each month, and now it appears to have been a gain of just under 20,000 jobs, which is a big difference. And the biggest job gains came from the healthcare sector, which usually does well no matter how the economy is doing. But like, yeah, a lot of sectors are doing layoffs right now. Warehouses down, retail, manufacturing, and so yeah, we're seeing a labor market that is slowing down, and we should talk about the revisions in a bit. But
Hmm.
generally this is happening because of the tariffs, uncertainty around tariffs, because of inflation, federal spending cuts, tougher immigration enforcement policies. So Trump is essentially firing this person for doing their job, for reporting on these statistics truthfully, which, these statistics are a reflection of the administration's actions. And so we were talking about this a little in the chat of just like, why, okay,
Hmm.
but why did these revisions happen for May and June?
And why were they so
And
large? Because
they
revisions
were
happen
huge.
all the time, but these were a massive. I was looking at one of the notes that an economist sent out, and they referred to them as monster revisions. And
Mm.
so I spent half of today just figuring out, like, why were they so large?
Yeah, from what I understand, the last time we saw revisions this big were like in the 70s, and then I think in 2020 in April, which makes sense. And like you said, these are, it's like normal. It's normal to get revisions. They happen. That's how we end up with the reliable data. And yes, these are big. Changes from previous months, I think they really reflect in a lot of ways how the government gathers data, because early versions of jobs reports rely on larger firms that respond quickly, and it takes a while to hear from the smaller businesses, which tend to be,
Hmm.
more heavily impacted by economic forces. And also survey responses have been apparently going down for a while now. And it also, when you take a step back, kind of matches what people have been expecting to some degree. Because I think economists and folks have been looking around and being like, I don't know, the economy feels kind of good, like maybe too good with everything going
Yeah.
on, and there could be some cracks. And so, it kind of it makes sense that there would be some kind of impact on the labor market with such erratic trade policies. Like, yeah, of course, businesses can't plan and can't invest and can't hire if they don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. What's your sense based on what you've read? Anything that
So,
I
I
haven't
mean,
touched on already?
I think it is interesting, we're going to learn more about this, I'm sure, in the coming days as more reporting comes out. But this idea that, it is jobs numbers are a lagging indicator, and they do say it is initial claims, right, or the initial numbers, and that's why we know that there are revisions. And you mentioned sort of the last time we had these really big swings, but one of the things Trump was complaining about was a big revision. I think it was last year, or maybe it was, no, I think it was in May or something like that. Somebody will correct me in the chat, but there was a big revision that was expected that really swung the numbers. And then this was just a surprising revision, and
Yeah,
especially surprising in terms of the
that's true.
scale. But one of the things that a couple of the economists I was following on Blue Sky today were saying is that this is very, and Ben Castleman had a good piece on this in the New York Times, saying, and actually, let me just read it real quick
Yeah.
because it was a really good sort of summary of like why these changes were such a swing at this point in particular. He wrote, the monthly numbers are based on a huge survey of businesses and other employers. And like you said earlier, Rima, not all
Hmm.
businesses respond in time for the initial estimate. However, forcing government statisticians to fill in the gaps with a statistical technique that essentially assumes the businesses that didn't respond behaved in the same way as the ones that did. That approach works fine during normal times, but during periods of rapid change, that assumption can be misleading. Businesses that fail to respond might be struggling to keep their doors open, for example, or they may have shut down altogether. The point being that in times of really big economic change, that's when the data is the hardest to get. And so I think that's, something worth keeping in mind with these revisions. But That kind of coupled with a lot of the other economic data that we got this year, the GDP growth, and I would highly encourage folks to go back and listen to my colleague Sabri Benishor's reporting on the GDP numbers and some of the other trade stuff this week, because he really gets into it. The GDP numbers, we saw some manufacturing data out today, and all of this looks like the economy is slowing down. That's the takeaway, right?
Yeah.
And this is the environment in which the President of the United States is firing the messenger. And I was seeing also on Blue Sky today, somebody who got fired from one of the tech agencies and governments, like the president, when he hears something he doesn't want to hear, he fires the people who give the message. But the thing is,
Hmm.
once you start firing all these people, it actually frees them to say
Right. They can
even
say
more
more.
because you're no longer bound by the Hatch Act. And so, in some ways,
Right.
it's actually opening the door to more criticism of the government. But
Yeah. And
that
I
was just,
just, mhm.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, no, no. Yeah, that's a very good point. And also, just want to underline a little bit more why this is a big deal that he fired the commissioner. Businesses, investors, everyday people, we need to trust that official government numbers are accurate. Like, even inserting
Mhm.
doubt, I think, undermines the integrity of these institutions. Like, does this mean that the administration's only going to reward people who peddle false numbers or only put things out that look good for Trump? Like, how are we supposed to trust what is happening in the economy? And or what happens when in a few months, I think Kai said this on the show today, like when we start to see good job numbers,
Are we going to
how are we
believe them?
supposed to interpret that? Right. And we've seen what happens when leaders of other countries politicize economic data. It destroys public trust.
Yeah.
So,
Speaking of other countries, that was the other big story today, which is that a lot of these new
yes.
tariffs kicked in. And, you can look everywhere and find, sort of where it kicked in, who got an extension, who got, a reduction, what deals were made, and everything like that. The Guardian has actually a really good article, the full list of Trump's tariffs from India to Taiwan, breaking down all of the different countries and who got what level of tariff. So you can just go country by country. It's like 5 pages of a list with all the different percentages, with obviously Brazil and Canada and China and Mexico having
Hmm.
some particularly meaningful numbers. But one of the other stories I saw in The Guardian earlier this week really highlighted kind of the effects of the tariffs on other countries, not just from okay, it's going to be harder for them to sell goods in the United States, but what that means as a knock on effect. So there was a story, the headline is "There's no work now, just debt. Cambodian garment workers face precarious future as US
Mm.
tariffs looms." This was before they kicked in. Tens of thousands have returned from Thailand since border tensions began, because there's a conflict there, a violent conflict. But jobs are becoming harder to find as factories cut hours amid order uncertainty. So here is in the midst of a, almost war between Thailand and Cambodia, workers there who had relied on the garment industry for jobs because of these tariffs are now facing even more economic uncertainty. A similar story in the Wall Street Journal about Lesotho, a country headline here, in a country Trump says nobody's heard of, tariffs bring chaos. And in this
Wow.
case, it's actually, let's see, the country's government declared a state of disaster in July as Trump's looming tariffs devastated the country's textile industry. And
Mm.
there was a program for years that allowed certain African countries to export goods to the United States with little or no tariffs as a way to sort of stimulate economic growth in various African countries. And so they were taking advantage of this program, and now they're getting penalized for taking advantage of that program, because what did it
Hmm.
do? It created a trade deficit, which Trump doesn't like, which means they get slapped with tariffs. And this is creating economic instability in this country as well. And so we've been talking a lot about what these tariffs mean for the United States, what this means for our political relationships with other countries, but they are also in many places, the tariffs that the United States is implementing is destabilizing the economies in different places all over the world. Not to mention, as was pointed out in a story in US News, freaking people out here. There was a survey in US News that 85% of Americans are concerned about rising back to school prices. due to
Mm.
tariffs. So impacts both here and abroad. Yay, tariffs. We talked a long
I
time. We
just
got
don't
to
have
get to
anything
this
else to
game.
say. I know.
Yeah, let's be done with the news. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to play half full, half empty.
Let's do it.
It is game time. I'm going to start because Drew is here to host half full, half empty. So take it away, Drew.
All right. First up this week, are you half full or half empty on private equity investing in youth sports?
I heard that story this week.
Yes.
This was, oh
It
God, private
was a,
equity is in everything, isn't it?
I know, that's a thing. It's just, I feel like every industry now. I mean, immediately I'm like half empty because, I mean, private equity, its whole thing is to extract profit as quickly as possible, right? So I just, and sports, was this, this was youth sports, right? That's what you said?
This was youth sports, yeah. This was an interview that Kai did on the show earlier this week, and I'm trying to remember. He was speaking. Who was he talking to? Let's
He
see.
was,
Tom Ferry,
yeah.
executive director of the Aspen Institute Sports. And it's funny, I was at the Aspen Institute Sports and Society program. And it was a really interesting interview because, like, the private equity investment in itself is not, by default evil, even though we've seen a lot of bad examples of what can happen when private equity kind of gets extra greedy. But it really does kind of highlight just how expensive having a kid can be in America, especially if you are trying to give them opportunities. And from what I understand, a lot of times in some of these youth sports leagues, they're giving kids and their parents the idea that they can really go far and they're willing to spend whatever it takes to get it. And so they're
Right.
kind of capitalizing on people's hopes and dreams. I'm half empty.
Yeah. And especially with something like youth sports where it just feels at odds with the ethos of play and connection and community and growth and like I don't know. I'm always cynical when return on investment is the north star of a company or a project. And so I worry that it would lead to like higher fees and to your point like more pressure to specialize in this and or to like really
Hmm.
get invested in the sport and yes, I am half empty. And folks in the chat are like, yeah,
I'm so sick of
all the way
private
empty.
equity taking over everything. All right, what's the next one, Drew?
Next up comes from Eater, a story about the New York City dining scene, where fewer
Mm.
restaurants have full-time pastry chefs, but those that do are pushing more and more show-stopping desserts. Are you half full or half empty on spending $30 for dessert?
Um, spending
I
$30. I mean, how good is
I
this
don't.
dessert? I don't know.
Or it'll be a
I'm looking at
particular,
the
it'll be like a
pictures.
larger plate intended for sharing. They're just like bigger and
Mm,
bigger courses. But one
for
of them was
dessert.
a chocolate tart with a dollop of caviar that was pushing it to
Ooh,
35.
oh.
I see it.
Yeah, I don't
That
know about
just
caviar, but I love the name Showstopper. Reminds me of Great British Bake Off. Is that your cat in the background, like rummaging?
he has decided this is the optimum time to play in his little tunnel with the bell
Oh,
on it. And as
it's so much, it's so loud.
Artax, stop it.
Um,
God. Anyway, I don't have a huge sweet tooth in general, and so and also I generally get full before I can get to dessert, and so
oh no,
you're
there's
probably
always
not
time
gonna.
for dessert. I never
Yeah, I just
understood
don't.
that rationale. Yeah.
Yeah, I just generally don't have much of a sweet tooth. I'll generally, and this is very on brand for me, I'll have a dessert cocktail before I'll order dessert. So, will I drop $35 on a dessert? Very rarely. I'm gonna have to go half empty on this one. Will I drop
I think,
$30 on a dessert cocktail? Probably.
mm, no, I'm definitely half full. I,
Mm,
yeah, and I love a shareable dessert,
mm-hmm.
it's a good vibe. Most people
Okay.
are saying half
What's the
empty, I
next?
think.
All
Yeah.
right. Next
Next
up,
up, Drew.
are you half full or half empty on a possible comeback for subscription-based kids magazines.
Oh my God, I loved this story so
Yes.
much this week.
Yeah,
Because
that
it
was a
just
nice
reminded me
conversation.
of all of my favorite like kids magazines when
Me
I was
too.
little.
What was it called? Highlight?
Highlights magazine.
Highlights. Ugh, I just have
There
such a distinct
was,
memory of like the pic. You remember that activity where you had to like compare two pictures and see like what the
mm-hmm,
differences were?
mm-hmm,
Spend forever on
yeah.
those.
National Geographic Kids magazine. There was another like science-y one, but I also was like huge fan of the American Girl magazine,
Oh
and
yeah,
I
same.
loved that
We could never
magazine
afford the
so
actual
much.
dolls, but it was like
But the
always fun to just
magazine
like
was very
imagine.
accessible.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was
I
a nice
remember,
conversation. Hmm.
yeah, I remember I got like all these recipes that I was like baking cakes into adulthood
Oh.
from my like American Girl magazine recipes. But yeah, that was a lovely conversation about kids magazines and
And if I'm remembering,
I'm mm,
sorry, keep interrupting
no, it's
you.
okay.
Well, I was just gonna say, I remember from that conversation, I guess it was a writer, right, who was talking about how a lot of the folks who are making these magazines, it's interesting, they're the ones, they don't have a large staff because they can't afford
Hmm.
to hire a lot of folks, but they are often the ones making the magazine themselves and they're selling them at higher prices,
Hmm.
which, you know, like for $5, $15. And the rationale being that they're trying to approach them as these like higher end kind of magazines and want them to feel more like books and
Hmm.
more evergreen, which I appreciate. I think that's really smart. And there's clearly a market for it with parents who just don't want their kids on iPads. So I am half full.
Great.
Yeah.
What's
And
the
the
next one,
magazines don't have
Drew?
ads.
Last up is the listener poll. So get
Okay.
ready out there. Are you half full or half empty on the government doing tariff rebates, as in
Oh
sending people
gosh,
checks out of the tariff
I saw
revenue?
that.
Oh,
Oh my God,
yeah.
I saw that. That was just wild.
That was a
Okay.
bill that I think Holly
Y-
um,
Yeah,
proposed, right?
I don't know if it's a bill yet. I think it's sort of a
It's basically this
proposal.
concept. I think they were talking about what was it, like $500 or $600 that should be sent back to American families to offset the cost of tariffs. It's like, or, or just throwing this out there,
Or
Congress could reclaim the
what if?
ability
What
to
if?
set trade policy and say that they're not going to do this.
No,
Oh, you
that's
were right, Rima.
wild.
It's a
Let's.
Holly bill. Yeah, you were right.
Okay,
Yep.
nice.
Josh Hawley, who said that the Medicaid cuts, is a Missouri senator, yes, senator,
Yeah, from Missouri.
um, who said that the Medicaid cuts in the OB3 were too bad for him to vote for it, and then voted for it anyway. That Josh
Didn't
Hawley.
he also propose a bill to say like let's save rural hospitals? But
He
it's like
was
the
on
same kind
board
of
with
like,
the
mm,
rural hospital like fund, which did make it into the bill, but it's not enough
right.
to offset the cuts.
But it's the same kind of idea of like let's take away this thing, let's like impose this thing and then sneak in something else to help. Like I don't know, like it doesn't make sense. Why are you? It's like this weird workaround of like slapping tariffs and then turning around and being like, here's the money, or I don't know. It just it doesn't
It
make sense.
comes from like this place of non-legislating since they bundle so many things together um, to get anything done or to pass things in one large piece of legislation. Like this is what's happening with the spending bills that they're working on right now to keep the government funded, is that all this stuff is being bundled into these few appropriations bills that have to pass in order to fund the government, and they are getting loaded up with earmarks. Like last I looked, like there were thousands and thousands of earmarks that members of Congress are trying to put
Mm,
on these appropriations bills because it's probably the last thing they're going to get through before the midterms,
right,
and
right.
so everybody's trying to get all this stuff in there. Anyway, folks can probably tell I am half empty on this. But just half empty, not all the way empty, because if something like that were to get through, it probably would be meaningful for some of the folks who are most
Right.
vulnerable to the impact of the tariffs. It's bad policy, it's a bad strategy, but it would
Right.
probably help people who really need it at a time when they're getting pinched. So I will say half empty. All right,
Hmm.
so here is the result of the poll with 104 votes, 88% half empty, 11% half full. I love the optimism of that 11%. Mm-mm.
All right.
So that is it for today, folks. We're going to be back on Monday. And in the meantime, please send us your comments and your questions. Please don't forget your wins to make me smart at marketplace.org or leave us a voicemail at 508 UB Smart.
Make Me Smart is let me try again. Make Me Smart is produced by Courtney Bergseeger. Today's episode was engineered by Charlton Thorpe.
The team behind the YouTube live stream is Emily McCune and Antoinette Brock. Daisy Palacios is our supervising senior producer. Nancy Fargali is executive producer of Marketplace Shows. And Joanne Griffith is our chief content officer. And our cats are Artax and Simsim.
And Simsim, which means sesame in Arabic. It's not Simsim. Simsim.